Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum everyone. Today we will discuss second language learning, second language acquisition, second language learning, and our focus is definitely English language. First of all, we need to make a difference between ESL and EFL. What is English as second language and English as foreign language? When we say ESL, English as foreign language, second language, ESL, it means you are using and learning of English in some native English speaking country or a country where English is extensively used by the natives. For example, if you migrate to USA, you migrate to UK, Australia, New Zealand, Canada, where the native language is English, you start using English there or you start studying there, it will be called ESL because you are yourself a non-native speaker, but you are communicating and you are learning in an environment which is a native speaker. On the other hand, EFL is something opposite to it. When you learn English language in a non-native English speaking country, for example, you can say China, you can say Japan, they are non-native English speaking countries. Even in Pakistan, you can also say we are not native, although English is extensively used here, people can understand. Not very extensively, but somehow people they are many educated people, they are aware of English language, but still we are not native English speakers. It is not a English environment country. So that is why English spoken here or English learned here, it will be used as EFL, and if when we migrate to some or we live in some native English speaking country, that will be ESL. So in second language learning, there are different theories, there are different point of views, there are different processes, but all they are based on routine matters which all of us we face while learning a language or we experience. Instead of using the word face, experience will be better. So first of all, the characteristics of the learners, it's the age is you can say one of the prime factors in learning a second language. As a child, if a child who is in who takes birth in some Punjabi speaking family, and then he takes admission some good English school, like there are many those who offers O levels and A levels where focus is on English spoken. So what happens there at an early age, if a good environment is provided to the learner in the school as well as in the home, it will be very easy for him to learn a second language, to learn English language. While sitting in the home, he will be using his Punjabi mother tongue, but he will be very fluent in English language also. As we can see, many children who are very fluent in language because they have been given an opportunity to express themselves in English. So when the children they are encouraged to express themselves in English language, they can easily communicate, they can easily have conversation in target language, in English language. Otherwise, as we grow old, as far as we make a comparison between children and the adults, when we are 17, 18, 20, 22, as the age passes, our focus is more on the structures, vocabulary, understanding, punctuation, that what things are going where, because our uh, maturity level and our thinking level it increases. But as a child is concerned, he won't be thinking about different things. He is just listening and repeating. He listens, he hears, and he repeats. So, by repeating the words which he is learning from the environment, he can easily communicate in the target language also. And it will be very easy for him to learn the grammatical structures as compared to the adults, those who try to learn second language at later ages of their lives. So Whenever a child is learning a language, definitely there is no classroom setting, there is no formal setting. But when an adult is learning a language, there is always a classroom setting, and the focus is always, for example, if someone starts learning the skills of English language at the age of 22, 23, let's say, for example, at a very young age, a very you can say early mature age, early 20s. So his focus will be how to make the sentences accurate. So at a later age, our focus moves towards accuracy of the sentences, and to bring accuracy in the sentence, correction in the sentence, we try to avoid mistakes and errors. So by avoiding mistakes and errors, our speed of learning is affected. As far as the children are concerned, they are not careful about the too many rules, about too many structures. They do not focus on it, but actually their focus is to communicate and to convey their message, because they have heard someone saying it and they start saying it, and in this way they start learning the grammatical structures. They don't need to attend any formal class, but the adults, they do. uh, then we have the learner's characteristics, like in children and in adults, that we have already discussed, that the attitude of the children is always different than the adults. uh, you can say the attitude of the children towards learning grammar at an early age, it will not be very concentrating or very effective. But as compared to the children, the adults attitude would be very much towards learning structures of the language, and to learn some good vocabularies, or to learn some punctuation and good writing skills, everything. Because at a later age of life, when we learn a language, we learn for some purpose. For instance, someone wants to go abroad and he wants to appear in IELTS exam, then he has to learn the four skills of language. A child is compared, he is not having a target. It's just a language for him. So this is the basic philosophy and basic difference between the characteristics of adults and the children. Like a child who is learning from the environment, second language from school, he listens to his teachers, to his class fellows, then at home his parents are speaking English, so he becomes fluent without having any target in his mind, that why is he learning. So for him it will just be a language. But for an adult, there is always a purpose to learn a language. So the attitude definitely vary. So then we have the atmosphere, silent until they are ready to speak, express to the second language for many hours every day. It is same. The children, as I have already discussed, that whenever they are exposed to second language, they love to express themselves from for every time, and they do not care about their errors and mistakes. As far as adults are concerned, they have, like, attending some classes, then repeating the lectures, then learning it, then learning, thinking that what is going on. That thinking process is always comparatively less in the children when we talk about learning of English language or acquisition of a language. So this is the major difference between children attitude and adults attitude. You can simply say that the learning of second language takes place for children in informal environment, and learning of second language or learning of English for adults, it always takes place in formal setting. But at the same time, there is a question that if some adult who is uneducated, who doesn't have any knowledge of English language, and he moves to Canada, then what? How would he learn there? Now there will be two criterions. First of all, he would be able to communicate there with small sentences, which he will definitely learn from his environment, because it is natural that whenever we move to another country, and we do to another community, to another country where we don't know the language of the natives, we try to understand. Like, for example, you want to buy something from the shop, you know how much is it, what is the cost of it. So the small sentences will be learned by the person from the environment if he moves to a native English speaking country. But at the same time, uh, when he lives there, he has to have conversations with many people for longer time. then he will have to attend the classes there, formal settings. So proper English, proper second language, proper English language is always learned by the adults in formal setting. Either they are in non-native English speaking country or they are in English speaking country. As I've given you example, like if I, for example, if I have no knowledge of English language and I move to America or I move to Canada or England, then what would I do? First of all, I would have to, because it is my need to survive in the society, I will have to learn some small sentences about the bus fares, about some having some conversation with the shopkeeper. Such small sentences and phrases that I will learn definitely within no time, within days. But as far as the process of complete conversation is concerned, long conversation is concerned, that I will not be able to learn only from the environment. For that, I would have to attend the classes. So that is, you can say, 99% cases the formal learn adults, they learn English language or second language in formal setting, and the children, they learn from in informal setting. And the environment, definitely it matters. The atmosphere, it matters. Environment, it matters. For example, the child who is speaking English at home or speaking the mother tongue also, let's say uh, a child is speaking English language at home, the parents, they are motivating him and the school is also helping him to speak English language, then what would happen? A children is not corrected again and again by the parents, nor by the teachers as well as by the parents. But as far as the adults are concerned, the errors, they are taken very seriously from the adults, because the as an adult we avoid to make errors. As a child, we don't care about the errors. So this is the main difference of the environment. The environment is always sportive for the children, and environment is always formal for the, although the formal environment is always sportive in learner centered classes. But again, the autonomy and the freedom which is given to the naturally blessed to the children, it is always not given to the granted to the adults. Then when we are speaking to someone, definitely if we start interrupting him and start correcting him, it will create an unease environment. It will not be a feasible environment if we start doing it. What we have to do, we have to keep the conversations move on, whether we are speaking to some adults, whether we are speaking to some children. Most of the time your teacher is teaching in class, and the students, they make mistakes in English language while making some questions or taking part in discussions, and if the teacher stops them and start correcting them at the same time, definitely it will lose their confidence, and the learning speed of efficiency or learning speed of the second language learners, adults, it will definitely be affected. So all the time in the conversation, when they are going on, our focus is always on the message which is conveyed to us. The errors, they are corrected later on. And then definitely the errors, they may be corrected when we take exam, the teacher is taking exam or he is telling the students. After that, the best way to correct the students is that if the students, they are making mistakes in the classroom, the teacher must keep in mind all those mistakes. So the next day he should come, and without taking the names of the students, he should write all those sentences or errors on the whiteboard, and then make it correction and give 15 to 20 minutes that these we have observed these errors in our society. So these errors are very common, they must be avoided, so everyone will learn it. It will give a sense of self-respect and sense of motivation to the learners, instead of correcting them and criticizing them again and again. So there is a Stephen Krash's monitor model. It is influenced by Chomsky's theory of L1 acquisition, and Chomsky's theory of mentalism. It is universal grammar and mentalism. I don't know, like, I'm sure that every student of linguistics must know about Chomsky and his theory of universal grammar and mentalism. So Krashen, he gives his model, Krashen's model, sorry. So Krashen's model developed an interesting set of 5 hypotheses. First of all, it's input. Input means whatever we are listening. Then language acquisition device, which was given by Chomsky. It means language acquisition device is our brain, then the acquired knowledge which we have learned, and then there is an output, like we process the language and then we speak. We listen, we process, like we are learning, the language is processed in our mind, and then there is an output. Output means that what the words we speak. So in this way, this process of learning moves on. First of all, in second language learning, we have input, like we are getting some knowledge, and the same knowledge of language is processed in our brain, and then it is produced in conversations and in writings. Cognitive and development perspectives, like language specific model in the brain. Now they say that in psychological theories they believe that there is no language specific module in the brain, and according to them, learning and acquisition is a different process. Definitely learning is taking place in some formal settings and acquisition is taking place in informal setting. For a slight difference is there, like in acquisition a child acquires a language. Acquiring means uh, just listening and repeating. Even an adult can listen and repeat. As I told you an example, that if you move to another country where the native speakers are English, definitely you will listen them and you will repeat them. So it will also be acquiring. But all the children, they acquire language, but all the adults, they do not learn language. Some of them, they acquire language also. Then information process, like you can say, the information that we get. Information means the input that we receive from the environment. That is always with the practice and the and experiences that we have in our lives about languages. We observe something, we listen something, and then we start um getting some knowledge of language, because it is the best way to get a knowledge of language. When two people are having some conversation, if two people are having conversation in English language and we start listening them very carefully, definitely we will get lot of knowledge, and we will also understand that in which environment what kind of words they are spoken. So trying to understand or produce, however, there is a limit to how much information a learner can be attention to, and definitely there is always a limit. When we want to pay attention to someone, the amount of attention, or you say the timeline of the attention, it always matters. Sometimes we pay more attention, sometimes we pay less attention. So psychologically we cannot focus all the time, every time we are listening to someone and we are paying attention. It is not possible. Sometimes our attention is we are focused, and sometimes we are not focused. So it varies, but at the same time, by observing and by having some sort of experience by listening to the others, we can get a lot of information about language. Information here means the knowledge of language. Then there is controlled process and automatic process. Controlled process is always slow. Why? Because in learning a formal class, what happens? The learners, for example, the teenage or early 20 learners, when they join some English classes, definitely their learning process would be slow, as to have mastery over the skills of language, as compared to the children, because that process is automatic. They are just listening and they are repeating. But in formal settings, the process of learning is slow. Learning process is slow doesn't mean that the students, they don't learn it, but it means that when uh, like if a child learns a language in 6 months, then the adult definitely would need more than 2 years to have the same fluency as a child has. So there is a difference between these two. Then we have, and in automatic practice, definitely less attention is required. You are just listening and you are repeating. But in formal settings, our lot of attention focus is required, because we intentionally, there in formal setting we intentionally learn a language, and informal setting we unintentionally learn a language without any target, without any aim. And then we have connectionism. uh, Definitely there is an important role of environment. Environment plays an important role. Not because of they know the rule, but hearing. Now it's important here, like we correct the students, correct the learners their grammatical mistakes. How do we correct their mistakes? Not because they know a rule, but hearing, by listening. Like for example, if I say that um, I go to market and he goes to market, so there is S and ES addition. But a child who is speaking English at your home, if you start teaching a child how to speak English only to improve his fluency, he will never ask you that why go and goes. But he will start thinking when you are saying he goes, she goes, and I go, and they go, and we go. So this example, this difference, the child will definitely start repeating it in the language acquiring process and language learning process. He would repeating it, and he will come to know about the knowledge of the grammar automatically. So by listening and by hearing, we improve our grammatical structures as a child. And the same happens when some adults, they move, some adults, those who have no knowledge of English language, and move to some English language countries. Then we have uh, yes, connect competition view that language acquisition occurs without learners focused attention. So focused attention is always done in classrooms, and when there is no focus of the learner, it means that it's a child who's learning a language. Now here is again an example that someone who has moved to Canada and he is in early 20s or in late early 30s, he has no knowledge of English. He starts learning there from the environment. He starts acquiring a language without going into any English classroom. He starts acquiring it, but at that time he will be focusing on the sentences, that what sentence is spoken there. Here focus doesn't mean that if we do not pay attention or we do not focus, it means that we are completely indifferent whatever is going on. No, we are careful about the things, but how much we careful, that matters. That sometimes we are too much careful to understand, because some sentence or some words which are very important to us to communicate in another setting, so we try to learn because it is our need, and without those words and sentences we won't be able to communicate and have conversation in that particular setting. But at the same time, there are many other sentences which we learn but without focus. Our focus is not, we do not have any target in our mind. We just listen and we start repeating, and this mostly happens in children. And then we have its interactional hypothesis. Definitely, first of all, in learning process and second language learning, interaction is very much important. uh, Conversation or interaction with some fellows, or with anyone, with other human beings. Then it's noticing. Noticing is learned without paying attention formally and informally. Like you are noticing something, you are just observing something, what is happening around you, what the words are spoken around you. For example, you are going into a university bus. I give you an example. You are going in a university bus, and suddenly there is some sort of you can say a hard talk between two students. There is only hard talk, not physical fight. So in hard talk, one student suddenly shouts and he speaks one sentence of English. Let's say he says that, uh, don't you dare to speak loud. This sentence is spoken, two people, they are having hard talk in the university bus, and one is saying, don't you dare to have. This English sentence is spoken, they are having conversation in Urdu language or in Punjabi or Saraiki, but suddenly one of them, he speaks one sentence in English. So that one sentence of English will be focused by all the passengers sitting in the, all the students sitting in the university bus, because it's different in sentence is spoken. So this is called a noticing of the environment, because it's second language. So psychologically we are tuned towards it. As we are discussing these psychological factors, so we will focus that which sentence has been spoken by the other person, why he has spoken English sentence while having some sort of brawl, some sort of quarrel, some sort of hard talk with another student. So this is called all the time noticing. Like when they are discussing in Urdu, you are simply listening to them, but suddenly if one of them speaks one sentence of English, you are completely focused and you are noticing it more. Noticing means to focus. Then input hyper language pattern, like form and the meaning at the same time. Like when we are getting some knowledge, definitely we must know the grammatical category of the word and we must know the meaning of the word, that how, if I'm learning a word or a sentence, then in what kind of environment I will be able to reproduce it. And in processibility, we say focus on the syntax. Focus on the syntax means that we have learned lot of information, we have got lot of knowledge of language, but now we have to arrange that knowledge of language and to produce it in our conversation. Like we have to arrange it into our sentences. So making the sentences of the knowledge of the words that we have got, this is processibility. Like to process your knowledge, it's in a simple words you can say you have lot of words in your mind, but you make the sentences according to the situation, according to the environment, according to the other person who is standing before you. So this particular structures of the sentences, arrangement of the words which we speak, that is called processing or processibility. And then the socio-cultural perspective, the most easiest one, definitely. We all live in societies and we have social interactions always. Whenever we are talking to someone, it means we have some social interaction, social conversations. And definitely learning process in a society, it occurs when we start communicating with someone. You move to another city where your mother tongue is not spoken but some other languages are spoken, definitely you will start learning some words and the accent and the patterns of that language by listening when you will have some conversation with the native speakers of that language. So in this way, while having conversation with others, we learn a lot. Then we have whenever we are speaking to someone and we start listening to someone, then the speaker who is speaking there, he plays an important role. He gives lot of knowledge to us, he gives lot of information to us. So whenever you are talking to someone, you have given your point of view, then you are silent and the other person is speaking, you are focusing on what he's saying, then definitely you are getting lot of knowledge which has been conveyed to you by the speaker. And when you are speaker, then you are conveying lot of knowledge to him. So this is all about a brief overview, or you can say a kind of short summary of second language learning. Thank you.